Hello and welcome back to On Point HQ, and in this video I'm going to be showing you how I paint my late war Germans quickly. I've mentioned this in the past that I used to be a really slow painter. I used to paint individually. I'd paint on a sprue, I would then build, and I got nothing done. About 18 months ago I completely changed my approach to painting, how I went about doing it. And in that time I've painted close to 4 armies, so it works. But it works for me anyway. So what I thought I'd do will be just to run through exactly what I do to paint my late war Germans. Now when I say late war Germans, this could apply to, well, for me it can apply to Grenadiers, it could apply to Fallschirmjager, Osttruppen, engineers. All my late war Germans get painted in the same way, which is using Vallejo field grey as a base. I don't camouflage my Fallschirmjager because I'm a very lazy person and I don't like painting camouflage, but I like the way they look, and let's face it, that's the main thing. So what I thought I'd do would be just to run through the process that I use to get to finish the sections that I do. It's quite a simple process, very limited palette. It allows me to get through quite a bit of painting in a relatively short space of time. Now what this video isn't, it's not a painting tutorial. There's a couple of reasons for this. One, I have many bad habits when I'm painting. I'm quite a messy, rushed painter. So following my steps, it's probably not the best way to go. But if you can take what I do and improve on that, that's the ideal outcome for this. Is just taking what I do and making it your own, modifying it using different paints or what have you, but the process in essence remains the same, and that's what I'll be doing. Now on the screen now there'll be a couple of pictures of what I'm talking about. This is what the majority of my late war German army looks like, and these have all been completed using exactly the same process, more or less the same paints. And I can fly through these, and I'm pretty sure better painters than me can fly through them even quicker, just using this process. It's a very limited palette, and it all really depends on, like I say, limited palette, limited paints, limited colours, a wash, and then very basic highlights, and jobs are good. You've got to complete a section. What I'll be doing is working on a 3-man plastic mortar crew that I kit bashed, using various bits and pieces from the Fallschirmjager and USMC plastic boxes. I thought I need to complete this anyway, so I thought it'd be a good idea to use this to show you exactly what I do, rather than running through a section of 10, which would not be a good idea. Which brings me on to my next point. What this video isn't going to be is me painting for 2 hours. That would get tedious very quickly. What I'm going to do is go away, paint the section, take a couple of photographs, show them to you, and then move on. That will keep the video to a minimum, and won't bore the arse off you in the process. Another couple of reasons for this as well is that when I'm painting, I like to paint to music. I can't have silence in the background. And I don't want a copyright strike on the channel for having background music, so that's another reason. And the third reason is I'm just short of 6'7", and sitting in one position for a prolonged amount of time ruins my back. My back's already pretty much ruined anyway, but painting for a prolonged amount of time is not good for me, so I tend to break it up by walking around, and if I'm doing a prolonged painting session, me walking away from the camera every 10 minutes would not be good for viewers. So they're the 3 main reasons. I hope that makes sense. So what I'm going to do is start on this. Now what I'll be doing to start off with is flesh. Now I paint from the inside out, and so I'm going to start off with the flesh, and what I'll be using will be, you can see that Cadian flesh tone from Citadel. I used to use Vallejo Sunny Skin tone, but I find that the flesh tone works better with the Agrax Earthshade wash that I'll be using. It gives it a more of a ruddier, deeper look, whereas with the Sunny Skin tone, it looks okay, but I much prefer Cadian flesh tone, which reminds me I'm getting quite low on this, so an order might have to go in very soon. So what I'm going to do is paint the flesh on these 3 guys here, take some photographs, come back, show you, and then we'll move on to the next stage of the video. So I'm all prepared. I've got a nice cup of coffee. Music wise, I'll be listening to this Frontline Assembly. For me, music is really important when you're painting, and like I said, I can't paint in silence, and me talking for the best part of 90 minutes would just be a nightmarish tedium that I'm not prepared to put people through, quite frankly. But with that out of the way, I'm going to go away now and get the flesh on these, and then I'll be back, show you what I've done and what I'm going to do in the next stage of the process. So see you soon. Righty, so that is the flesh applied to all 3 miniatures. There'll be some photographs on screen now, a bit closer detail of what I've been up to, but as you'll see, it's not the most careful or detailed work in the world, but at this stage it really doesn't have to be. What I'm trying to do is just get the main flesh colours down. I'm going to be applying the paint after this, so there's going to be a few errors and mistakes. These can always be quickly tidied up at the end of the process before the ink wash. Now the way I've applied this is using Cadian Flesh Tone, and this was applied in 3 or 4 diluted coats rather than one big gloopy mass of paint. The danger of doing that obviously is that you're going to clog up some of the detail on the miniature, and the paint flows better if you water it down. It's very simple painting 101 there. Earlier I forgot to mention the prep that I did for these. Now I follow the same prep for all of my late war Germans. I always go for a burnt umber undercoat, and then the base coat is applied to the entire model, weapons, flesh, equipment, everything gets coated in Vallejo German field grey. This gives me sort of a kind of a blank canvas to work with. I'm not going back later on trying to reach various nooks and crannies with a size 1010 brush or something. It just gives me that good base coat to work with. And then I paint outwards from there, which is what I've done with the flesh here. Again, quite quick to put that on, and I can always go back and touch up any mistakes, which I can already see later on in the process before the ink wash. So the next stage is to paint the equipment and the weapons. Now I'll be painting the rifle, the entrenching tool, the water bottle, and ammunition pouches and webbing using German camo black brown from Vallejo. At the same time I'm doing this, I'm also going to paint the bread bags grey, and I do this by using Vallejo dark rubber. Once that's done, I will then use dark rubber and apply a drop of black, and this will then be used on the boots. After that, that's pretty much the main part completed. A few bits and pieces to do after that. What I'll do now is I'll go away, use these 3 colours to do equipment, boots and weapons, and I shall see you shortly. See you soon. Welcome back, and that is all of the equipment on these guys painted. Again, pictures on screen now, a few closer shots of what they look like. So as you'll see, the entrenching tool, the water bottle, canteen, webbing, ammo pouches and rifle have all been painted using Vallejo German camo black brown. I've also used the same paint to paint the goggles on the middle dude's helmet, and I've also sort of pre-painted the map that he's holding as well, and this was done by using the existing camo brown with a small dab of Vallejo ivory to create a light brown that'll work well once it is washed with ink later. What you'll notice is I also painted the bread bags using dark rubber, and a mixture of dark rubber and black to paint the boots. So that's pretty much all the equipment painted so far. What you'll notice is that I haven't touched the metallics yet. So the metallics that we're looking at are the binoculars, the MP40, the metal parts on the rifle, and tops of the canteen and water bottle. This is because when we apply the wash later on, it's going to be a brown wash, and what I don't want is brown on metallics. it makes it look rusty and worn and not very realistic. So all the metallics will be applied later on in the process after the inking has been done and dried. But that right now is pretty much the basics done. So what will happen next is I will apply a wash of Citadel's Agrax Earthshade, and I'm getting again really low on this stuff. This is like a lifesaver, this. It's liquid talent. And what I'm going to do is I have to put another order in for that, but what I'm going to do is apply a wash across all 3 miniatures using a big brush. That's my technical term for it, a big brush. This is watered down slightly. I always go about 80-20. This will settle in the recesses of the model. Generally hides any mistakes as well. It works really well like that. But it also helps later on in the process because it will define where the highlights will be added later on in the process. But that's what's up next. Before I do that, what I'll do is I'll go back in with Field Grey and the Cadian Flesh Tone just to rectify a few small errors that I can see. There's actually not that many. I'm quite proud about that. What I'll then do is add the wash, wait for that to dry. Once it's come back, I'll show you what it looks like once the wash is dried, and then I'll proceed on with applying the highlights. So, see you in a bit. Well, that's the Agrax Earthshade applied across all 3 figures, and that's more or less fully dried. The photograph's on the screen now as normal, and this will just show you exactly what the Agrax has done. It's brought those colours right down, but it's also, more importantly, in one wash we've got shadow, we've got recesses across all the figures. Any gaps in between the flesh and the material, they've been shaded. There's shadow in there. The faces are shadowed, so there's good recesses to work with highlights in the coming process, and it's just worked the way it should. From here, we're on the home stretch now for how I normally paint my late war Germans. So we've got the base colour down, we've got the wash down. It's now basic highlights. Now, why do I say basic? Well, if I was painting a section of 10 and I want to get into the tabletop in a relatively short space of time, I don't want to be spending time doing 3, 4, 5 layers of highlights. I could do, I just don't want to. So I keep it at one basic highlight, and I only apply it to the flesh, the uniform, and the equipment. One basic highlight across those 3 parts of the figures, and these guys will be no exception. So what do I use to highlight these colours? Well, I just basically use the same as with most highlighting. Use the colour you've used originally, but what I do is add a very small drop of Sunny Skin Tone. Now, what I don't do is go overboard with this. The ink has brought the colours right down, made them really dark and muted, and where the ink has settled, it's really giving you a kind of a blueprint where you need to apply the highlights. The sculpting on these Fallschirmjager models from Warlord Games is excellent, so that helps already at this stage, but the ink just kind of defines that area for you. So all I'm going to do is add a drop of this to all the primary colours that I've used and apply the highlights sparingly. With the face and the hand, all I'm aiming for is the brow, the nose, and the cheeks and the chin, and the backs of the knuckles. For the uniforms, it's just really the uppermost creases where the light would be hitting, and for the equipment, very basic highlights. For the equipment, just a bit of brown on the very uppermost layers of the equipment. Same with the bread bag. I don't bother highlighting boots. I don't see the point. They're going to be covered by the base anyway, so I can skip that for now. But that's the next stage in the process, to apply very basic highlights. So I will get that done now, and I'll come back once those have been finished, and then after that we'll move on to adding metallics and a few more smaller details. So see you soon. Hello and welcome back, and that is the basic highlights applied to all the major areas of the figures. Again, pictures on screen now rather, to show the highlights. And like I said, they are very, very basic highlights. I'm not aiming to win competitions here. Are these going to win competitions? Absolutely not. Never in a million years. Well, are they tabletop standard good enough for the table? I would definitely say so, and that's what I'm aiming for right there, is consistency, tabletop standard across my armies. It's so having one or two really fantastically painted units and the rest are tabletop doesn't really appeal to me. I like my armies to be completely linked together. And this is why I use this process. So what you'll see from the photographs is highlights to the uniforms and the equipment and the rifle and the face. So what we're going to do now is go in and pick out the smaller details. By smaller details I mean the metallics, highlight the map, put some tints on the goggles. Once they're done, the miniatures are pretty much complete. So how do I go about painting metallics quickly? Well, what I use is a mixture of Vallejo gunmetal grey, and I combine this with dark rubber. This gives me not a really bright, stark, metallic, overly metal looking piece of equipment, but rather a more used, burnished, dull looking piece of metal, which is, when you look at guns from World War II, is essentially what they were. They weren't bright and shiny. Guns in combat very rarely are. So what I'm going to do is apply this mix to the binoculars and the MP40. Now, contrary to what I just said, what I use on the main parts of the rifle is just gunmetal grey by itself. This is more from an aesthetics point of view. It just helps it contrast against the wood of the rifle, but they'll all be getting a wash of Norn oil anyway, so this will bring any kind of brightness down. I also apply straight gunmetal grey to the tops of the water bottles and also parts of the canteen as well. Again, they will get a wash of Norn oil just to bring them down. I'm going to add a highlight to the map, very, very basic, and then use a very light blue just to give a bit of a tint to the goggles that the middle guy is wearing. And once they're done, that is it, fully completed. So I will now go away, complete those last details, come back and show you the finished piece. So see you soon. Hello and welcome back, and that is the main part of the model finished. So all three have been finished. Pictures on screen now of the completed crew. I mean, obviously the model's not entirely finished. I need to add the mortar and I need to do the base, but that will take no time at all. But for me, the main part is the crew is finished, and in literally no time at all. As I said before, what I'm aiming for when I paint these is tabletop standard, and that's what I believe that's what I've got with these guys. Limited palette, one wash, very basic highlights. Again, very few paints involved, and no time at all. Crew finished. So I've actually set out what I intended to do today. If you found that helpful, again, just put comments or questions below, and I'll certainly respond to any comments or questions about this process. If you've used something similar, or if you use this on your own figures and want to let me know how it goes, even better. I'd love to know how people take this and make it their own, improve on it, use different colours, use it on different figures, different nationalities, different armies. I'd love to hear any feedback you've got. But overall, very, very happy with how these have turned out. Again, relatively quick, 1 cup of coffee and 2 albums from Frontline Assembly. If they're excellent. If you've not checked them out, really do so if you're into your 80s industrial synth like I am. But I digress from the matter at hand, which is these guys. So all in all, finished. Less than 8 paints used, I think. And I can now get cracking on with the painting the mortar and the basing, and that'll be done. Next time I do an update video on the channel, I imagine this fully completed piece will be on there, and this will replace the the metal kit that I've currently got in my Fallschirmjager army. That I don't really like it. I'm not a big fan of metal kits, and that's no exception. It doesn't really quite fit in with the army as it is. Right, I've probably taken up a lot of your time with this video. It's probably gone a lot longer than I intended to do so. But like I said before, I hope you find it helpful. If you do use the technique itself, please let me know what you think, how you can improve on it. Any suggestions that for me that you've got that you think I could use to improve. Always willing and open to new ideas. Well, I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for sticking along for the ride. And as always, take care, may your dice roll well, and I'll catch you all in the next video. Bye bye for now.